Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening for tonight's episode of St. Ben's at Home. My name is Marcia Malum, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and a St. Ben's alumna from the class of 1996. I'd like to begin our time together this evening by sharing our land acknowledgement. Both the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University occupy the original homelands of the Dakota and Anishinaabe peoples. We honor, respect, and acknowledge the Indigenous peoples forcibly removed from this territory, whose connection remains today. St. Benedict's Monastery and St. John's Abbey previously operated boarding schools for Native children. Now, students, faculty, and staff are working to repair relationships with our Native Nation neighbors. Thank you. Towards the end of this evening's episode, there will also be time for questions. So if you have anything that you'd like to ask Betsey, please click the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen to submit your question. Please note, you may need to exit out of full screen view to use the Ask a Question button. Tonight's session is being recorded and will be posted on our Alum Learning Consortium's past event recordings page in the next 1 to 2 business days. Now, please welcome our moderator, Heather Piper Olson, Vice President of Institutional Advancement.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for tonight's episode of St. Ben's at Home. It's a delight to be with you this evening, and I'm so happy to welcome our Chief Marketing Officer for both St. Ben's and St. John's, Betsey Kershaw. Welcome, Betsey.
Thank you, Heather.
How are you today?
I'm awesome.
Are you?
Yes.
So glad to have you. So I'm really excited about this conversation. I know lots of folks are, so let's get into it. Okay. So I think people are really curious about how a brand works, about how our St. Ben's and St. John's brand is working in particular. But before we go too far down that road, can you tell us, as someone who is newer to the St. Ben's, St. John's communities, but was familiar with these two places, what excited you about this opportunity and the opportunity that sort of continues to be in front of you?
Well, first of all, I love being here. I'm about a year in now. When I was first approached by Kara Kolnitz, our COO, she asked me to come to campus and just walk campus with her. And of course, I'm a Twin Cities resident, so I live in St. Paul, and I have 2 college grads. And I think St. Ben's, St. John's was sort of peripherally on my radar, but I was curious when Kara invited me to campus. I wanted to know more because I hadn't heard a lot about what I've grown to love to be St. Ben's, St. John's. And so it was a Saturday. We took kind of a quiet little walk, and we just talked about what I saw, what she was seeing, and what the opportunity was. And then she sort of kindly, in the nicest possible way, begged me to come work or at least start some work. And we started some work. We started advancing some projects at that moment.
So what was that first project that you sort of dipped your toe in?
Well, I kind of pulled up to campus, I parked my car, I kind of slid into a desk, and I think immediately we knew we wanted to tackle some campus graphics. So looking at some of our banners. So when students were entering, doing tours and touring our facilities, just bring some brightness and some energy to just campus and wayfinding.
And I think you see that. I think we've noticed that the banners that are on campus right now are so bright and lovely. I think it's the first thing you see, especially if you come into St. Joe, you see these banners all the way. And for those of you who've been here in the summer, you see flowers and the banners, and it's just a lovely welcome. And that, I think, is just a really fun thing. So I think we noticed right away that works. So you have a fair amount of experience in higher education. It's not like we were your first rodeo by any means. So what excites you about marketing for higher education institutions? And why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in that space too?
A little bit about my background. I actually started in the film business, so I have a background in New York City, kind of cut my teeth in children's television, so there's an education bent there. But when I was decided to leave the industry, I put myself through graduate school by working at New York University, and I loved working in higher ed. I've always loved working in higher ed because it was such a privilege to just be around smart people. And I think it's been the thread that has kind of continued throughout my career. I moved here in the early 2002. My goodness. So I've been in the Twin Cities for quite some time, on the brand side and the agency side. So I've served other institutions on the agency side. So I have a unique, I'm also married to a professor. So.
And you can say with this crowd who you're married to a professor at which institution?
At the Purple School.
Okay.
So I live across the campus from the University of St. Thomas. I'm a neighbor, and they were my client for many years, and my husband's a faculty there.
And they do great branding
Yeah,
too.
they
And there's
do
lots to celebrate.
phenomenal
Yeah.
branding.
No,
And
it's
I'm
great.
really tight with their former chief marketing officer, and she's amazing.
Great. So I know that about you, and you said that too. You love higher ed. I think we both are. You're a curious person, and you love the sort of, I think you love a good marketing problem. And so what did you see when you first arrived here, maybe not on campus, but just generally with our brand problem? What were your first perceptions related to our brand?
In the kindest possible way. It just was outdated. Didn't really reflect what the stories I was hearing from longtime Bennies, longtime Johnnies. It just didn't feel modern, and it also didn't feel like it would appeal to 16, 17, 18-year-olds. So there was just needed some freshness.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate you
Yeah.
sort of not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings, but I mean, that our brand, for those of you who maybe do know, I think was done that first time that we came together in a joint branding effort was with the previous logo mark, which I think 30 years almost. Like Yamamoto did it, at the time it was probably fresh, but brands aren't supposed to last that long.
No.
They're supposed to evolve, and we kind of left it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, I know enough to know part of it's like, it took a lot to get us to that point.
Yeah.
And so it gets difficult to change. So no surprise there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually one of the realities, one of the tasks with strong integration was to articulate what makes us so distinctive among other higher education institutions and get aligned in that. So what did you notice about us that makes us distinctive from other institutions?
Well, first of all, it's 2 campuses. I mean, honestly, I don't think I've ever faced a more challenging marketing problem, because we're not talking about one institution, we're talking about 2. And I know we all know that, but it's incredibly complex. So I love a good challenge. And, I know with a marketing challenge this complex, you really have to, in some ways, put your experience aside, set your assumptions aside, and it's a listening journey. So you have been so gracious with your time, but listening and talking to people who've been here a long time, who have just loved these places so much and have had such a deep connection. So I had to just kind of like zip it for a little bit, not quick to judge, quick to assess, not quick to judge, and then start to slowly advance some of the work that we can show you a little bit today.
Well, I think, though you haven't been here a long time, I mean, we are Benedictine institutions, and the reality of it is the first word of the rule is listen.
Yes.
And I think that's probably why you've been able to really have some success here, is really giving folks a chance to sort of talk about what it is they love. But also encourage us to think differently about that. So let's take a little bit of a beat, because I feel like we're getting down the road, but let's just kind of do a little bit of education. So can you describe for our listeners, what is a brand?
That's really not a fair question, but I'll give it a shot. I mean, it's, I think we're surrounded by brands all day long, from the clothing we wear to the cars we drive. But I think ultimately it boils down to, what is the feeling that people have when they connect with your brand, with your institution, with your product, with your service? And then also, what are they saying about you when you're not in the room? So I think it's as simple as that. How do we make our students feel when they walk onto the campus, when they take their first tour, when they enter the classroom for the first time? A lot of those are actually hard to kind of put language around and storytelling around, but I think the thing that I've learned about these places is that it's the people who have graduated, and 10 years later, that's where the story is. Like, what are they doing now because of this amazing place, this amazing brand that they attended for college?
It has to feel authentic. It has to feel real, aspirational at the same time. But of course, it is too. Like brands sort of live with you over time. I'm sure nobody, we think about like sort of Nike and what Nike means. That I'm sure nobody thought that swoosh would live with us the way it does, and we would all see it and know it's not just the logo mark, it's not just the just do it, it's that there's a certain sense of like what you get when you buy that, when you buy into that brand, or when somebody's wearing that thing, right? So for us, it has to figure out how does it feel authentic when you wear it, but also lets people know some things about you too. So why does it matter for us to have that? Like, what's the most important thing that we should be thinking about when we decide a brand is a thing we need?
Well, I mean, we're kind of like the best kept secret in central Minnesota, and that is the opposite of, I think the joke that we always say is that we love our Benedictine value of humility. It's a terrible marketing strategy.
Exactly.
Absolutely terrible. But it really matters right now because we know that students that are applying to college, because of the Common App, they're applying to as many as 12 institutions at a time.
Yeah, someone said, like an expert, a higher education expert said that like his student who's a junior, and so is my daughter, their counselors recommended their child apply to 15.
That's insane.
Like,
we can only go to one.
Right. It's too many. I mean, too many decisions.
It's confusing. And so what's really hard from an enrollment and a marketing standpoint, like how do we break through? How do we cut through that noise, that competitive set? And the thing is that for every individual student, it's a totally different competitive set. So right now, strengthening our brand couldn't be more important. It is the number one thing in terms of telling our story, both from a storytelling standpoint and just a beautiful representation of who we are. So it's, and of course the demographic cliff and all the things that are happening in culture, the headwinds are pretty strong in higher ed at the moment.
So can you tell us a little bit about the process? Our listeners have heard a little bit about sort of some of the research that was done in the past with Simpson Scarborough, and you've done some research that some might know about. Some people might have even participated in focus groups. Do you want to just tell a little bit about the process that went into creating the brand before we show everybody what it looks like?
Well, gosh, it was a non-traditional process because so much work had been done previously. So a lot of it was just, me and a few strategy folks just sitting around synthesizing and understanding and honoring, honestly, the work that had been done before us, because we wanted to make sure that, when you do research, there's always findings that are important, relevant, things that we should consider. On top of that, we took this kind of some quantitative research, and we added some qualitative research. So we talked to students, faculty, staff, alum, and just we had some ideas and some concepts, and we just really wanted to get some input. So that was kind of step one. And I'll let you ask, kind of how that worked. And we had some success in terms of our understanding. We didn't have a ton of momentum. I think we may have moved too quickly in that moment.
I think really one of the things that I think a lot of our listeners and our viewers sort of know is that we've been doing all the things all at the same time here as we're moving through strong integration, right? Like I love to joke that we are flying 2 planes while we're building a third with parts from the other 2 and new parts at the same time. And I think that's where typically in higher ed, we have these cycles where you do research and you do like brand positioning, and then you do that, and then you do a strategic plan out of it, and then there's like these 10 to 15 year cycles. That is no longer an option in higher ed at all, and let alone the fact that like we were sort of organizing ourselves around strong integration. We had a lot of energy and focus, and especially also coming out of the pandemic, really we're sort of like we're laying everything on top of each other. But Brian has been here and shared, and we continue to reiterate, like The goal of strong integration is for us to be nimble and adaptive, and we will put things out maybe before they're totally ready, but we're moving and we're constantly evolving. And so I think about the way a traditional brand process maybe would have gone in the past. That's not what we did here.
Yeah.
And we went, we are moving at a pace. When something has to get refreshed, we're refreshing it. So maybe let's kind of get into that a little bit. So can you remind us like what has been done so far on branding? And, you've been at this for a while. People have been seeing this stuff even before we did some kind of big brand launch. So how did we get here?
Well, you said I think the most important word in this work, which is evolution or evolve. I mean, we are on a journey. We're really in a transformational moment from a brand standpoint. And I think early on, knowing that we have incredibly passionate stakeholders in this work, and a lot of them with varying degrees or just opinions, lots of different thoughts and opinions and feelings.
And we're all consumers, so we all have opinions about the brand.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we all have different stories that enter us into this conversation around our two institutions. So I would say this language around evolution is really key to the work, because to your point, we have to move quickly, and Brian has asked, that is what we've been charged with. So we have to iterate and create as we go. And I think that's been a great approach.
Yeah.
And so knowing that our former mark was going to require deeper conversations with our monastic community, we are like, well, what can we tackle? And we tackled athletics.
Yeah.
So I really feel like this was really exciting, because both our athletic directors were very engaged in this work. And I now feel we're sitting, for the first time ever, we have athletic brands that champion all our athletes. We had a lot of branding and I think design work done on the St. John side of things. We had not had as much attention to our Bennies and their athletic brands. And now everything's been elevated. We have new fonts, we have new colors, which we'll talk about in a second. We have new ads we're running, we have new language, there's a lot of energy. And a lot of that work was done. We have worked with a design partner in Minneapolis, Replace Design, but also like Kelly, our AD, she was a phenomenal partner in this work, and so was Bob on the St. John side. They really were committed to getting this right, and it was a fun place to start. And I love this photo because yes, we launched a new brand, we introduced new colors and new typography, but we basically left it up to the coaches to decide how they wanted to uniform their athletes, and this uniform for our hockey players is just the perfect blend of our new palette, our new brand, and it stands out.
Yeah, and I think for those, remember too, like on the St. Ben side too, it wasn't that long ago that we moved away from blazers. So it's really been new and fresh. I mean, if you would have told us, even 5 years ago that you would see Bennies on a uniform, I'm not sure everybody would have been there, but we've been really excited. This has been a unifier. Our athletes are excited. And many of you know, I'm one of the volleyball coaches, and they're proud to be Bennies. It's evolved in how they feel about it. And we honor our former Blazer athletes, and it continues to be a part. Our Bennies are still trailblazers, but this has also been a way for them to see themselves across campus, and for all of our students to see themselves as Bennies on the field, in the classroom, across the board. It's been a real unifier, and it's been fun seeing that parity with St. John's too. Yeah, it's been really great. So,
I mean, actually, just to add, I do really feel that this was a moment where it felt strong integration came to life visually.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. So again, you said we didn't quite get all the way with the word mark and everything. So where did we go with this? The first thing that kind of came out was that St. John's logo. Tell us a little bit about that and how we started first with that mark, and then kind of into the what everyone sees there in our current new mark.
this was a super interesting process because we introduced the hexagon, and you saw a lot of that with the inauguration, but it was such an obvious, it was kind of like the answers to the tests were right in front of us, and we knew this hexagon was a sacred geometry that we wanted to lean into. But the thing that was the most troubling, I would say, when I first joined was like, how do you say College of St. Benedict, St. John's University? It is a mouthful.
It's like Heather Piper Hole. It's all the letters, very long.
How do you do it? And it's and then sometimes people will say, well, it's St. John's University and College of St. And I'm like, no, it's College of St. Benedict first. So it's just a lot of language issues and tongue tying around our name. And actually the biggest tongue tying was our acronym. So many institutions like St. Thomas can say UST. Well, we have to say CSBSJU. And when I first started, I was like, SJU, it's just, you twist it up. So here's what's cool. I love data. I love beautiful design, but I love the data just as much as I love design. And I looked at Google Analytics, and one of our top search queries was CSBSJU.
Because it's our URL.
Yes.
People need to be able to, off the top of their tongue, say CSBSJU.
Type it in. And we had not done any brand work around this acronym. And so we thought, let's just, you know what? We're going to put the mark, our official mark, off to the side for a second, but let's figure out what this CSBSJU is, because from a small space digital perspective, thinking Instagram, TikTok, all of the social media channels that our students are using, this thing needs to be small and legible. And we created a system where, bam, CSBSJU, it's just a fun, informal way of expressing our brand.
It's great. And I constantly remind folks about that too. Like, it is, again, we need prospective students, their families, when people need to find us, they need to know exactly the order. And it's our email addresses, it's our URL. It's really, really important.
And it's our top Google search.
It is, which I love. Love that, the data. So tell us a little bit about the hexagon. Why the hive, why the honeycomb language? How does it connect to our Benedictine charism, living in community, daily life on our 2 campuses and beyond?
Yeah, I think when we were pitching this work to all our stakeholders, including the board and the monastic community, we landed on this language that I think really resonated, which is, the sacred hexagon. It was and is a powerful unifying symbol on both of our campuses, in the Sacred Heart Chapel, in the Abbey Church, and it's already been adopted. So again, it's like the answer to the test was already there. It's in our environment. It had been used in some of our marketing and in a variety of ways. So it was was very prominent in Brian's
and very popular. We had so much positive feedback.
Yeah.
We heard from alums all over about it. They really loved the hexagon for lots of reasons. I always sort of laugh. Part of it is, I think, beehives they're matriarchal. We love that idea of collective, the dignity of work. You see that in community, living in community, sort of all of us knowing our role. And the strength of that, right? The strength of hexagon on top of each other. It's not a link where there's a weak link. It's actually the strength of that too. So we've found it's really resonated. That was the one thing for sure. I would just say kudos to everyone involved. That has been the obvious. You're right. It was just right there. Everyone sort of assumed it was easy.
Yeah, and that was the container for many of the versions of the logo that we were proposing. And ultimately, we just went back to our traditional, the legacy cross, and decided that what was going to really, I would say, make everyone excited about this new mark was actually just a redrawing of our legacy cross in a more modern, legible way. So it's still very much, I would say, represents where we've been and honors the tradition of our legacy cross. But now we have a new cross that whether you're Catholic or not, it feels open and modern and warm and invitational.
Yeah, and the thing I think people will notice too is in the past we really just had kind of the one red
Yeah.
Red shield, white cross, and you'll see multiple versions of this, which I really like. You'll see the CSBSU. There's just a lot more flexibility with the brand.
So much flexibility.
Which keeps it fun and interesting, assuming we're going to live with this for 30 years, which we're not, but we'll talk about that later. How did we get to the color scheme? So that's a little new.
This was so fun because sometimes in the most unexpected places, there are the clues. And so I think one of my early campus tours, I walked into the bookstore and I saw this beautiful sweatshirt, this blue sweatshirt with red language. And I asked the bookstore staff, like, what is your top selling piece of apparel here? And they're like, everybody buys, even on the Bennies side, everyone buys this blue sweatshirt with the red letters. And I was like, well, that's interesting. So, but
my daughter has that sweatshirt. I want to be really clear.
I immediately bought that sweatshirt because I thought it looked so cool, and my daughter stole it. So now that actually lives in Arizona. And then I got another one, and my other daughter stole it. So I knew something was happening there. There's something about the blue, which quite frankly was only used on the St. John side of things.
Yeah, that lighter blue.
Yeah, and it was called the Johnny blue. So, but we wanted to make sure that first of all, it's a great blue, but the thing that was most important about where we landed with this palette was, is it distinctive? Who else has it? Color combinations, there are many versions of maroon and gold and navy and yellow and whatever you want to call it, but there is no other institution that has what we're calling action red and power blue. So
which that power blue is a different color than that one that we talk about as the heritage blue.
So we use
more vibrant
kind
blue.
Of Johnny blue, renamed it as heritage blue. It still shows up in apparel because power blue is not a great t-shirt color, but it is a wonderful accent color in terms of typography and design and graphical elements. So this and you saw that in the hockey uniform. So this color combo, it's distinctive, it's memorable. And then, so those are our two primary colors. And then we have some other fun colors that we can play with as needed.
And I will say for our viewers who remember the Centennial, which, 2013, that power blue is very close to the aqua that lived as like an accent color. And because it looks beautiful with red, right? And this is a slightly different navy that was in the old palette as well. So, and people saw that those two, that like aqua teal, kind of dark teal navy combo, those were the two that we really lifted up in the Centennial. So this feels, I will say, when I saw it, I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that ruby is a nice, not quite purple, like garnet, lovely. And it just that sort of really freshness to it too.
We need lots of flexibility when we develop color palettes. So just making sure we have some secondary and tertiary colors to play with.
So for those of you who are on our mailing list, and if you're not for some reason, contact, definitely let our alum relations team know. But the current magazine, which everyone should have received, is all about branding. And we are really starting to see some momentum with that. So talk about some of the highlights that have happened so far with our Refresh brand.
I think the magazine, it's so good. I love it so much that I have the cover of it blown up in my office and all.
I got a copy too. It's real pretty.
I felt like that was the moment where we were kind of, all of our engines were running around the brand. When you see it show up in big, beautiful photography, the link is on the cover of the Benny magazine. Our agency brought in all the new color palette we just talked about, all the new typography. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I think that the magazine is a beautiful representation. I think it's the first representation of the completion of the brand.
I agree. It's just been so fun. And there's something so iconic. What's more iconic than St. Ben, St. John's, than the bus, between campuses. And I will say, I think I might have been the first person to see it from St. Ben, St. John's, to see it in the wild. I saw it driving down 75 around my neighborhood and said, look, the bus. And it turns out I don't know where it was heading. It was not heading.
Freshly painted.
It was not heading to St. Joe, but it was lovely to see. It was so obvious. It's so vibrant. It's really fun to seeing it, on 94 and in the back roads there too. So, St. Ben's and St. John's were sort of the envy of many Minnesota colleges for years. We didn't need to invest that much in marketing for lots of reasons, but that's changed definitely now. So can you talk a little bit about how that change happened and why it's just not true that we don't have to market ourselves anymore?
That one's tricky because I just was in a conversation with a woman whose son is 17 and is looking at colleges, and I know that her husband is a Johnny. And so I said, well, what's he? I said, so of course he's applied to St. John's. And she said, yeah, but he's going to go to Montana. I'm like, wow, that's what we used to count on.
Yeah.
A Johnny would would create a new Johnny. A Benny would create a new Benny. And I feel like we can't rely on that anymore. And that has worked for so long. But, we can maybe touch on some of the research findings that through the arts and science work, if you're up to it, it's a bigger project. But, we have some really interesting data that has reinforced some of the things that we know are problematic, which is we aren't currently top of mind.
For anyone.
Even
folks who are, what we're learning through that work is even for students who are in our pool, in our system,
Right.
have responded to emails, have requested visits, have inquired with us.
Yeah.
They don't think about us
No,
first.
they don't. And our competitive set is not our competitive set. And so some of the things we've been chasing and concerned about, we don't need to be concerned about. What we need to think about is in this moment, almost as if it's a little bit of a startup mindset. Like if we were to start these places today, how would we go to market? And that's what's driving a lot of this work.
Yeah, and in previous episodes too of St. Ben's at Home, when Brian's been our guest, he's talked about sort of that narrow top of funnel we used to have. We were at the luxury, and we really need to widen it. So that's been it's been a big part of this too.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, I mean that I did want to bring up that work because I think the biggest piece that we were struggling with was just general brand awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to me. And as someone who lives in St. Paul and my children went to the largest public school in St. Paul, Central High School, one of the largest, no one was talking to them about St. Ben's. Which is a real bummer to me because I think at least one of them would have really thrived here. Like I would love to have a Benny daughter. However, so that was just the first clue. Like, wait, why? I have kids who went to school. There was no connection to our huge metropolitan area. So the first thing we did is we're like, how do we make a big splash? And of course, there's always conversations around billboards, and I think they're a huge waste of money. So we decided, who's going to help us do this? And guess what? We have our alums are everywhere, and we have a senior chief financial officer, revenue officer at the Minnesota United, and the chief whatever finance. I don't know what he does.
I think he's like chief growth or revenue, and she is the chief administration and CFO.
They're fancy people.
C-suite
at the Minnesota United, our professional soccer team here in Minnesota, and they have 19,600 fans that show up twice a month during soccer season. So I was like, well, what have we ever thought about a partnership with them? And we launched that last year. It's been incredibly successful. I'm so proud of that work. Our brand awareness is like, it's kind of on fire, at least right there that 94 corridor, right in front of those two. And we are the only higher ed partner of the Minnesota United.
Very cool. It's really fun. So check out a game. Yeah. It's super fun. It's just a great atmosphere. And I think truly, with all of this too, we've talked about it too. There's some good news even in the stuff you're saying, in the sense that like if people don't know us, it's the one good new thing is we don't have to overcome other people's bad perceptions, right?
Totally.
Like our reputation isn't bad. We're just not known.
Yeah.
And I know that when people know about us, they're going to be really excited. So the trick is like to tell stories about us and get that information out there. The other thing, and Brian was really honest about this, I think, and Kara has shared this on an episode in the past, The other thing is we're getting outspent. I mean,
Yes.
that's just part of it too. Like we
That's
were just
true.
not spending on marketing in any way. And so the reality of it is we are really good stewards of our resources. We are still probably going to get outspent, but what we're going to do is do it really thoughtfully. And I think that's been really fun. And that just, it sort of multiplies for sure. So kind of related to this, the motto of St. Ben's is "So let your light shine." How does our new brand specifically shine a light on St. Ben's as a college for women?
You know, you just told me that motto recently, so I was like, wow. I think it's all about storytelling. I really do think that this new brand or this new mark really and our mission with marketing is about digging deep, being curious about the stories that are right in front of us and shining a light. I think, it just started off with, humility is not a good marketing strategy. This is the time to actually be a little braggy, tell our story, be super proud.
Tell your successes, Bennies.
Yeah.
Tell your friends.
Yes.
Let your light shine.
Yeah, it blows my mind. I proudly wear some of my swag in the cities, and people are like, "You a Benny?" And I'm like, "No, but are you?" And I love that because I kind of just wear it, so people will ask me, so I can have a conversation with them.
It's great, and I think that's really it for sure. I think our founding sisters were so smart in picking that motto because I think they knew that was the call to action for Bennies over and over and over again. You cannot hide your light under a bushel basket.
Yes.
You've got to celebrate. So tell your stories, tell your Benny friends stories, put those in your class notes. Let us know what you're doing. Let us celebrate that. And I think you'll see that reflected in the magazine too. The reality of, sort of these incredible powerhouse marketing professionals that are in that. The feedback they gave us and shared openly is like, what brand? Like, tell your stories, get it out there. And I think that's the reality of it too. So for me, I think that's what I think about so much with it. So let's talk a little bit more about sort of how this refresh brand is showing up now in daily life on campus and alums in the world. And I know you've already seen, we've got some examples of things we've been showing. So we'll kind of just talk through some visuals. What are you thinking about when you've been thinking about the visuals across the board?
Yeah, well, these campus banners have been up for probably 8 to 9 months already. But I think what you'll see is we're leaning into the flora and the fauna that already exists, surrounding us, but using illustration and color and just fresh, fun fonts for wayfinding. And just right now, everything is so gray and dead on campus, but these banners are bright and fun and, help you navigate the winter. So that's one way. And we're really looking for places to, bring that to life. This is just, I wish I had more photos, but some of our brand activations we're doing with our big red chair with the Minnesota United. We had this chair at one of the soccer games or 2 of the soccer games last season, and it was a big selfie moment. So creating kind of viral selfie spaces for people to take photos of themselves inside our brand. Banners welcoming our students back to campus, whether they're first year or whether they're returning to campus. Our link, which we talked about, so skinning, we had 2 new buses we were able to reskin. This is the link in real life. Some bus stops. So again, you're kind of entering campus, making sure you're seeing some of this new brand in a really kind of fun. We're basically trying to skin all the areas on campus.
Yeah, just getting that color. Again, wayfinding. It should be easy to find your way across. I mean, you can see the Abbey Cross, the Abbey Bell Tower from 94, but that does not necessarily mean you know how to get your way to admission, the admission office.
Or which entrance.
Right. And remember too, I think it's always really important for our alums and our constituents to sort of know that this brand should feel authentic to all of us, but it is intentionally focused on prospective students. This needs to be fun for the 17-year-olds in your life.
Yep.
And hopefully the 14-year-olds and the 13-year-olds as well, because we want them thinking about us earlier and earlier. We don't want them getting to a point where they're 17 and 18 and are like, I haven't heard. Right. We no longer want to be the best kept secret. We want to have that sort of fun and vibrant for sure. One of these, this is so lovely. I just sort of, along with so many things, this is actually in our bookstore now on the St. Ben's campus. Go in, take a picture next time you're on campus, get a new sweatshirt, get a new t-shirt, and take a picture with yourself against this I'm a Benny wall. It is so joyful. I love it so much. It's beautiful.
Yeah, kind of bringing some of those campus banners into some indoor spaces. All of this was illustrated by a local artist in Minneapolis. So, just really feels it's got a modern Scandinavian, it's just got a great vibe, and it just can't be in a bad mood.
Right. And we're so lucky here in St. Joe and in Collegeville to have the outdoors and indoors be such a part of what we have, like that idea, that alive, that like I think about this, it feels very vibrant, it feels verdant, and I like it feels verdant to me. That's what I just really love about it too.
And this is where we're really trying to reinforce this idea of how this beautiful red and blue can work together.
Yeah, it's great. So tell us a little bit, we've seen the brand, we've seen the logo mark, but can you tell us the story a little bit about Refreshing the Cross? We'll kind of go back to that. Refreshing the Cross in our brand. How and why did that happen? What does it represent? And who are the biggest champions of the refreshed look kind of across the board?
Yeah, when we finally introduced this, this was many, many, many conversations with many, many people, and, particularly, with our monastic community. And I think where we landed was just in the absolute right place, where we truly believe that this new mark is that intersection of mission and market. And that was key, that we weren't, steering away from our Catholic, Benedictine, liberal arts, residential college for women and men, but we were leaning into mission, but also making sure that paying attention to what's happening in the landscape and how do we bring in some of the market research and data that we had. We now feel it's a contemporary expression of our Catholic Benedictine identity. It's inclusive, it's universal, it's tolerant. We want it to have open arms, interfaith. It's relevant to students. The attributes are spiritual values at the same time, purpose and meaning, but also it doesn't close off people who might not be Catholic, and that's important, especially in some of the new brand research that we have. And then it elevates our brand to really reflect our values, and leaning into our values is a key piece of the work that we're doing in marketing.
Absolutely. I think I'll say, like, I've been in the rooms with our sisters when they've had conversations about this, and to say that just the support that they've shared for this work, the joy they felt for seeing this version be such a reflection of our Benedictine heritage. I think there's some fun things about it. The cross has a kind of a plus sign ampersand kind of vibe, which I think long-term will be really fun as well. And though I feel like now I see hexagons everywhere, I know for us, they are truly a part of our Benedictine story, which is also really, really great. So that's been really, really fun.
And it was incredibly, I think even though it wasn't necessarily the mark that initially tested the strongest, it is the one that resonated the most. And, you said in the very beginning of this conversation, it's like, you have to live with it. A brand is something you have to live with it. And as you begin to apply it, it takes on new forms and meaning. And a brand that's flexible really can be different things to different people. And I really believe we've accomplished that. Yeah. I was very worried about, our Minnesota United partnership showing up in that environment with this new cross. And I was just at a game on Saturday, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really great. Beautiful. It's really functional. That's, I feel, really Benedictine
really
to me too, is like is being utilitarian in the best way. I mean that in the best way. But again, you can see it in small space digital. It's easy to embroider. I'm very practical in that way. And that's what I think's been really fun about this too. I also love the white version. For me has been really, really fun as a fresh kind of new opportunity.
We have so much flexibility. It's white. It's been great. We were just playing with some apparel today where we're a black pull up with actually a black, like a tone on tone. So it feels really elevated. Yep.
Like it. Let me know when I can buy it.
Oh yeah. It's going to be in the employee store.
So how do you believe this refresh branding, all of this really positions us in the marketplace?
I think we're in a pretty strong position. It's obviously not just the brand work, but it's also the partnerships that we have, like with the Minnesota United, but also we've really doubled down on digital marketing. We are kind of crushing it. We have an incredible strategic partnership with the Minnesota Star Tribune, where they're managing all of our digital media. And so we have some great metrics, and we have a lot of proof points from a data perspective that is telling us that we're doing okay. We launched it in a big way, but we're also evolving it as we go. And that digital marketing investment that we've made has really allowed us to be iterative with this work. And we know what's working, and we know where we need to tweak.
The reality of it is, I think for sometimes with alums, we'll hear, but I'm not seeing it. The reality of it is,
We're not probably,
yeah, you're not our target market. Like, you'll see it in other spaces. Hopefully you'll see it in our work.
Yeah.
You'll see it what comes from us, but you may or may not be getting these adverts. Like, we are targeting 17-year-olds. We're in the places they are. They're on Spotify. They're in podcasts,
exactly.
the kind of podcasts. We're at football games in the metro. We're geofencing in local areas. Like, that's some of those things I think I want to be really clear.
Yeah.
But also that also does not mean that we don't need you to do referrals.
Yeah.
Send us that information. Like, if you make sure we know about prospective Bennies and Johnnies in your life, and tell us those. And then they're going to get some great stuff and some fun stuff from us as well. Once they're in our system, then we really have the opportunity to tell them more and more stories and see some of this work for sure. Yep. So what's the plan for caring for this brand in the future? How will we make sure that we don't find ourselves 30 years down the road?
Well, I hope we find ourselves 30 years down the road with, probably evolving it. Again, that evolution is key to all brand work. I don't know where are we right now? We're in a really exciting moment because we have the tools. We built the tools, which is the visual expression of our brand. So often that is the most complicated part, because we have new brand positioning, ways in which we're going to go to market for our prospective students. That is really exciting. And it would be very difficult if we had that brand positioning and then we didn't have the visual tools to bring it together. So we are currently sitting in a place where you'll start to see a big movement around a big, bold brand campaign to bring the visuals and the message together.
I know we have a few visuals from our admission materials, so we can kind of go. No, you don't need to explain it, but just maybe just share those. And as I sort of talk a little bit about, ask you a question, like, what's the difference between admission recruitment and marketing?
Well, I mean, it's as simple as in marketing, we're really focused on brand and brand awareness. And our admissions team and our partners there, their job is to make sure they have that individual attention. They are, in many ways, we're kind of warming up the market, turning on the oven, making sure people know that we're here. And then our admissions team, they're the ones that are building those relationships and quite frankly, closing those deals. So they're incredibly important subject matter experts as it comes to, when it comes to collaborating on this work, but we're really just trying to bring in some new visuals to kind of freshen up the brand. We have a new website, new enrollment materials, and this stuff is going to constantly evolve in this next phase.
That's really it too. I mean, we think about this all the time. People talk about how we don't get mail anymore. You do if you're looking at colleges, right? Like, there's still a place for, we've got to do all of it. Like, we are at football games, we are on the radio, we're in soccer stadiums, we are on the web, we're where they are in social media for sure, and lots of ads. So it's really, you never eliminate a thing, you just sort of add to it and keep evolving for sure. So I think it might be a place to, check in and pause the program and see if we have any questions. I know I have more too, so we can always do that. But remember, audience, if you'd like to submit a question but don't see the Ask a Question button, you may need to hit Escape to exit out of full screen mode, and then click the Ask a Question button to submit your question for Betsey. And we will do our best to get to them all. Marcia, do we have any questions from the listening and watching? Or sorry, Amy, do we have any questions from the listening and watching audience tonight?
We do. Our first question is from Anne, and she is from the class of 97 and is wondering, what is our next most important work in this area or process?
Our brand campaign. So
Right.
we'll be working on a brand campaign very quickly here for most of the summer and hope to bring that to life this fall.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Yes, we also have a question from Lisa, class of 1993, and she is wondering, how will success of the brand be measured?
Well, the beauty of the work that we're doing, that's a great question. Success of the brand, I would say, I would reframe it more the success of marketing, and because the brand is a part of what we're doing in marketing, and we are spending because we have, limited resources. We want to make sure that we can really measure everything that we're working on. And I always say you can't manage what you don't measure. So I feel like it's, as the steward of this budget and this brand, the most responsible thing to do is to lean into digital marketing where we have the data to tell us what's working.
I think that reminds me of the stewardship question. It reminds me actually of something that Sister Mary Reuter, who's on our board of trustees, and many of you have had her in a class at some point or know Sister Mary, but she reminded us, I think she needed to, that the Benedictine value of humility, like you said, it's not a great marketing strategy, that all the values need to be considered, and that it's actually bad stewardship, which is also a practice, a Benedictine practice and value. It's bad stewardship for us to not be telling our story. And that, again, that sort of idea of like, can't be hiding our light under a bushel basket. We need to know that people are getting the message, and we need to make sure that we're doing it to as broad an audience as possible. Why limit the opportunities for prospective Bennies and Johnnies to come here and receive a top-notch education, for sure? So I think I'll ask this question. We'll see if we have another one. But what can alums, donors, and friends of CSB and SJU do to help support the brand and the work of bringing this brand to life?
Oh my gosh, just please reach out if you can, either through Heather or track me down directly. But if there are stories out there that, if there's something you think we could be sharing, or there's someone we could highlight, just any way we can use our Bennies and our Johnnies to help bring the story to life, especially our alums, because I've had the privilege of kind of traveling around the country a little bit and talking to some alums, and just it's really incredible to just hear where they are in their lives and how St. Ben's and St. John's created the foundation for that success, and whether it's like who they married and what jobs they took. It's just so,
Or their joy.
Yeah,
right. It's whatever it is
right.
that makes your life fulfilling.
Yes.
That's the success story. I think it's really important for folks to remember that. Yeah. What role St. Ben's and St. John's played in their lives.
And I would say that's really unique. I don't see that elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think it's one of the things that matters. Brian's been trying to convince us, President Brace's been trying to convince us to talk not just about the outcome of a job. And again, remember, 1 and 2 in the state, like people are going to leave here with a great job, but also what does it look like to build not just a great career, but a great life, a good life, a life that adds value to others, right? And that's one of the things I think that we teach here, and being in community, for sure. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
We do. We have a question from Robin, class of 2015, and she is wondering, can you speak more about the branding changes on the website?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, again, so the website actually launched before we have the new brand. So that was a little chicken and egg moment, but and I think you'll continue to see us evolve the brand on the website, particularly as we incorporate some of this new brand positioning. So I think we've just recently, the new website launched in July with the old brand, and then we just recently updated the website with the new approved brand actually just in December. So that happened, and then we'll continue to, with websites, it's just constant testing and examining the data and looking to see, what we can improve, enhance, change But yeah, that's an ongoing process.
Yeah, the thing I'll say too about the website is that we went from having a billion, like so many
30,000
yeah.
web pages.
30,000 web pages, and a good brand, a good college or university website should have like 3,000.
Yeah, which is where we're at.
Yeah, and like so part of it too is knowing that like for a website needs to be refreshed and available. And so we've also really taken some time to think about internal communications and how we do that better. We were using the website for that too, and that became very complicated. The website's supposed to be for external folks and mostly, again, prospective students. So that's been something we've been sort of going through. Again, we admit that like there might be broken links. There's all kinds of, let us know if there's broken links. But we really are trying to have that website be something that we can maintain, refresh, evolve, and keep really current. And that's our expectation and sort of our part of our promise going forward.
And it's
folks.
a great platform, super
Yeah.
flexible system. We can update content on the fly.
Yeah. It's kind of been good internally and externally,
Yeah.
I will say for sure. I mean, not that everyone wants to know how the sausage gets made,
Yeah.
but I think it's been a really interesting thing. And we're also using a lot of other tools to keep in touch with prospective students and their families, with current students and their families as well, using some different platforms to make sure people get the kind of information they need from us when they need it.
Yeah, we just launched a virtual tour last week. So
Oh, I haven't even
that
looked at it
went
yet.
live, yeah.
Can't wait. Check that out.
Yeah.
I do have a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
all right. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have one last question from Brittany, class of 2002. And she was wondering, how have you helped your colleagues understand the importance of the brand refresh on campus?
I don't know, Heather. How have I?
Betsey, I mean, I will say Betsey's new, and we have like just thrown her
Oh my
in a bunch of presentations and tons of forums.
Well,
and-
I think the funny thing is that I think since I've been here, there have been 3 board meetings.
Yeah.
I've presented at all 3, and so we just had the 4th board meeting, and I was like, "What do I have to present? What do I have to
nothing. We
present?"
didn't make her
Yeah,
do a thing.
And Kara said, "Well, you no, that's not your time. You're done. You're good." I think we've just a lot of socializing, a lot of conversations, a lot of just really trying to get. I think the listening piece was key in the beginning, and then
absolutely.
and a lot of presentations. So I think this is, I wouldn't say, kind of went on the road with it. You know, I talked to the student senate, the joint senates. I've flown to Florida and Fort Myers. I mean, we've been really sharing
out
the
there.
brand. Yeah.
I think the thing that's the most important too, like again, at the end of the day, like our colleagues, our faculty, staff, like we all care a lot. We care a lot about these places, but our opinions are less important really at the end of the day than our students. And I think for me, what's really changed, I think a lot of folks' perceptions is actually just seeing our students wearing new gear, having fun with that, seeing it at volleyball games, at basketball games, at seeing that out in the wild, seeing new t-shirts sell out immediately, people being excited about new brands, new hats. That's been really fun. I will say that's been kind of the most fun. And I think that's what's convinced so many people that this has been the right move for sure. So, well, with that, I think we are done. And so I just want to thank you, Betsey, for such a rich and inspiring conversation tonight and all the work you've done to bring so much joy and life to our campuses. Audience, thank you too. We're delighted that you took an hour out of your evening to spend time bringing St. Ben's into your home.
Thank you again to Betsey and Heather for your time this evening. Audience, you can share additional questions or comments on tonight's episode through the evaluation form that'll be emailed to you from the Alumni Relations Office. This concludes tonight's episode of St. Ben's at Home. Please join us next month for a conversation with Chief Operating Officer Kara Kolomitz on April 8th. And we will share a registration link for that episode in the evaluation email that you will be receiving. Again, thank you all for attending and have a wonderful evening.